I want to start this video by sharing something personal with you all. Now, I understand that in this age of reducing attention spans, you might want to just directly skip to the analysis of this film, which is absolutely fine by me. But for those who wish to stay, I want to share a fragment of my life with you all as a token of gratitude. So, I've spent the formative years of my life in Agra, 8 years to be precise. My dad got transferred to Agra 2 months after my birth. So, you can say that I was born in a different city, but I took my first breath in Agra. And Agra will always remain very special for me. This is the city where it started everything for me. And this is the place where I started my education. I made my first friends there. I bought my first bicycle in that city. And I had my very first movie theater experience in the city of Agra. But the most important fact and the most special thing for me is that I made my very first friends there. But 8 years later, my dad's company asked us to relocate to Delhi NCR, which is where I've been living for the last 19 years now. And I'm sure you can understand how difficult it must have been for us to relocate from Agra, not just logistically, but more emotionally. And my family had very humble beginnings in that city, so it was natural for us to not have a very good access to all kinds of places, amusements, services, commodities and luxuries. They were totally out of our reach. Right now, I have a job which is enough to take care of my own expenses and provide for my family as well. And last year, I finally decided to go back to that city. It had been a really long time since I visited Agra, so I thought that let's get this done. Let's have this trip. Living in today's day and age requires you to keep moving at lightning fast speeds, and you just have to keep moving, keep hustling, keep aspiring for material possessions and luxuries. There is no harm in that, but I also realize that our lives are not simple anymore. uh, our surroundings have somehow lost that calmness and that tranquility of togetherness. Most importantly, we are not able to make any amendments in our past as we keep getting pushed to the future. Our present just becomes a ticking clock that is never meant to pause and just keep moving with the progression of life. But going back to Agra gave me that opportunity to reflect on my past. My decision to visit the city was one of the most gratifying experiences of my life, and it also gave me the chance to just pause the clock and truly rejoice in that moment. Just stop for a second and give myself time to breathe. Travel back in time and just meet my simpler versions. And this is exactly what three of us is about. We meet our first protagonist, Shelja, who helps with paperwork at the divorce division of the family court. Now, usually you must have noticed that the jobs assigned to characters in a story often seem to coincide directly or inversely with their lives. I don't know if that's applicable here as well, but still, let's just remember what Shelja does for a living. Along with her professional responsibilities, we also take note of her personal responsibilities. She has a to do list, something that the modern age introduced to keep track of your tasks and time. However, in the case of Shelja, her to do list is more like a life tracker, highlighting the simplest of chores and reminders that nobody can hardly forget. Now, being forgetful is nothing to worry about. We often forget something from our end in our day to day lives and we just move on. We don't feel sorry for ourselves or for others for such trivial matters. But that is not the case with Shelja, as even the simplest act of forgetting to add salt while cooking food is actually taken seriously by her and Shelja's husband Dipankar. In the lives of this family, forgetfulness is a grave concern, and we eventually realize that Shelja does suffer from dementia. Her suffering is shared by her husband, her son, and even her friends. They all know about her condition and refrain from mentioning it even as a joke. The clock of life has been running for Shelja at a different pace now. The real beauty of life is defined by memories. The ability to recollect your experiences, especially the happiest ones, defines our journeys from birth to death. But for Shelja, life has become more fragile because of how she finds it difficult to safeguard those memories, and this difficulty is multiplying with the progression of time. This is when, which also becomes the inciting incident, Shelja decides to not let go of a specific set of memories from her past. She expresses her concern about revisiting Vengurla, a town where she spent almost 5 years of her childhood. Life will continue to advance and there is nothing that can stop the wheel of time, and that's why Shelja becomes vehement to relive the innocence and simplicity of her childhood. When I landed my feet at the Agra railway station, I literally just sat there for a good 10 minutes. I just made myself fully realize the fact that yes, I have finally came back to the city of Agra, And the air, the radiance of sunlight, even the bench of the platform had oodles of nostalgia for me. The same is felt by Shailja when she arrives in Vengurla. She settles in the atmosphere of that city. She registers the sounds of that place. Later in the evening, she enjoys a meal with Dipankar, which seems to be her regular when she was a kid. The next day, we start exploring the city of Vengurla from the senses of Shailja. She first revisits her school because she is interested in inquiring about a special classmate, Pradeep. There is something about Pradeep that connects Shailja with her childhood. We will find that soon. After the school, she revisits her locality where she gets spotted by an old friend who has grown way older now and shares a life with another mutual friend, Parshuram. A lot of old photo albums are exchanged and memories of childhood are reinvigorated. Most importantly, we start witnessing a change of demeanor in Shailja. She looks more curious. Her eyes reflect a spark of happiness. Even her speech starts transitioning to sound more childlike. It feels like she starts experiencing an emotional rekindling of her innocence that got lost in the sentimentally shallow sophistication of adulthood. Dipankar keeps a close watch on his wife and accompanies her on this nostalgic trip down memory lane. He's constantly observing how his wife and her responses to her past life are making her feel something. He feels confident that this should heal her inner self. By the way, if you're still watching the video, I am very grateful for your patience and for your support. You can extend your support by hitting the red subscribe button and pressing the bell icon. And if you are liking what you see so far, do give this video a thumbs up. Finally, we have the moment that Shailja seems to be anxious for the most, meeting an old friend who got lost in a moment of time. Pradeep Kamath now works as a bank manager and he is as pleasantly surprised as Shailja after meeting her. Now, usually before meeting someone after a long time, we usually imagine a sort of excitement and cheer. We imagine being very chatty with that person, reminding us all of the good old days of solitude. But in reality, what we truly experience is a sense of hesitation, not because of fear, but because of happiness. We are clueless about starting a conversation because we first question ourselves whether the other person is the same unchanged human being or not. Shailja and Pradeep have a similar experience filled with hesitation. But there is something that we can notice here in regard to the varied usage of light and shadows. For example, in this scene, when she asks her husband to leave for Vengurla, we notice the outlook of Shailja covered in shadows, which I think represents her confused state of being, imbibed by her involuntary conditions of forgetfulness. After her touchdown in Vengurla, we start witnessing glares of the sunlight falling on her face, which clearly signifies her happiness. But when she meets Pradeep and they have this conversation, we notice Shailja getting covered once again in the shadows, unlike Pradeep. I think here, since Pradeep is happy to meet Shailja after a long time, his face is lighting up, literally and metaphorically. But Shailja is once again cast in the shadows, which I believe represents her guilt of leaving Vengurla and Pradeep back in time. This can also point to her hesitation to bring up her past, which is quite natural to be honest. As Pradeep takes Shailja back in time to her forgotten past, we once again see those moments of the sunlight falling on her face. And before this scene, we notice Pradeep's character covered in the shadows. Ultimately, I feel that these shadows represent the past life of Shailja, and the darker nature of the shadow signifies how she's forgetting her past. The shadows are Shailja's past, which takes Pradeep down the memory lane when he talks about his meeting. He's remembering his time with Shailja, which is now a thing of the past, covered in the shadows. We also have this moment when Shailja deliberately chooses to hide behind the shadows after visiting her Kathak training school. She's afraid of the fact that she's not just losing the command of her craft, but also losing the command of her life. But with Pradeep, Shailja feels secure. She feels confident about not really losing her sweetest memories. However, this begs Dipankar to question whether Shailja was really ever happy with her. And all of this made me understand the true meaning behind three of us. Yes, the name points out to these three characters, Shailja, Pradeep and Dipankar. They are the different periods of time, Shailja being the present, Pradeep being the past and Dipankar being the future. But I believe what it truly represents is the three hands of the clock of life, and these three characters personify those hands of this clock. And the functioning of this clock of life represents the act of remembering or forgetting memories. Shailja personifies the second hand, whose memories are fading faster than she could even realize. Dipankar is accompanying Shailja by acting like the minute hand, and since both of them live in the fast-paced metropolitan life of Mumbai, their friction of living also explains it. But Pradeep is the hour hand because he stayed back in Vengurla. He stayed back in time and did not choose to live life at a fast pace. He lives every minute and every second of his life. And that is why he remembers everything while Shailja is now forgetting her memories. The most important scene of this film is definitely the conversation on the top of this giant wheel. Not because of what happens when they confess their unsaid feelings to each other, but how it happens. And this is the reason why I have my theory of three of us being the three hands of the clock. So, till now, we have been focusing on how the film is about the clock of life and the lack of memories, which makes our life more fragile. Shailja decides to go back to her past to recollect all those memories of her childhood, and Pradeep was an important fragment of her life that was forgotten due to an unfortunate accident. So, when the giant wheel stops in the middle, it feels like the clock of life has paused for Shailja and Pradeep to just have their moment and say whatever they wish to each other. And that's exactly what happens. They are both traveling in the past and making the progression of life stop for a second in order to convene themselves in a state of togetherness that is not obstructed by any societal pressures to move on. Pradeep is forever grateful to Shailja for not forgetting him. And at the same time, Dipankar also understands that being forgetful is nothing to worry about. We often forget something from our end and just move on with our lives. We don't feel so sorry for ourselves and for others in such trivial matters. Let me know what are your thoughts about this film. I would love to know your theories in the comment section. Don't forget to share this video, and I will be back soon with another one. Till then, my name is Parush, and thank you so much for watching. Long live cinema.